Thank you to Omaze for sponsoring today's video. We're excited to be working with Omaze to offer you a chance to win a $130,000 custom tiny home from Trueform Tiny and support a great cause, the National Park Foundation. Go to omaze.com/Poppy Ranch to enter for your chance to win. It's time to dream big and do it tiny. Whatever style you dream of, Trueform Tiny will help you design your tiny home and turn it into a live-in ready reality. Whether you want a place to escape from the city to that lakeside fishing hideaway, or a desert oasis perfect for stargazing, or even a quiet home office or an Airbnb, this could be yours. Donations can support the National Park Foundation and make an impact. The National Park Foundation works to protect wildlife and parklands, preserve history and culture, educate and engage youth, and connect people everywhere to the wonder of parks. So for your chance to win a $130,000 custom tiny home from Trueform Tiny, go to omaze.com/Poppy Ranch and enter now.
What the hell was that? Hose pop? I think a hose pop. Get too hot?
I managed to get my buddy Marc back over here with his excavator to help me finish cleaning up the new property, but also, more importantly, to help me get this new driveway and then the new pad cut in on the new land. The long-term goal would be to utilize this land in the best way possible for our animals, for our family, and ultimately for our homestead. But getting the new driveway cut in is the first step in the process. Before we start digging the driveway in, I want to get the last little bit of wood cleaned up. And because Marc can process the wood so much faster, he has been able to pick out probably another 4 or 5 cords of wood that we can add to our firewood pile. But there is a little bit of brush left to be cleaned up first. Because of the size of Marc's excavator, he's able to go through the brush and the down trees much faster and still pick out anything that could potentially be used for firewood. So on the one hand, he's creating more work for me, but on the other hand, this is the kind of work that I should be doing this time of year, getting firewood stacked up. After I process all the firewood that Marc has set aside, we will likely end up with somewhere around 5 or 6 cords of firewood, which is about 2 to 3 times the firewood that we typically use in the house. But as I get the shop finished up and I start working out in the shop more over winter, obviously I'm going to burn a lot more wood out there, and there's a lot more square footage out there to heat as well. So we need all the firewood we can get. Over the years, I spent many cold nights in a sleeping bag in the woods. And at my age now, that's not something I necessarily look forward to because frankly, my feet are a long way from my heart. And so laying in a sleeping bag, it can be hard to keep the feet warm. But when it comes to the basic principles of comfort, staying warm can be just as important, if not more important, than actually having shelter. In a worst case scenario, it's basically food, shelter, and how are you going to stay warm. But if you can't stay warm and if the temperatures are low enough, nothing else really matters. So in my opinion, if you live in cold country, you should consider an alternate heat source. So if for some reason your power goes out or your natural gas is lost, you can still keep your place warm. Don't forget that I am a plumber, and I spent many years fixing the broken pipes after the cold snap came through town, and the power may have gone off, and the house didn't have an alternate heat source. If I live in cold country, I would do whatever I had to do to keep my family warm and to keep myself warm in the process, even if I lived in the middle of a city. Unfortunately, in the world that we live in, the average person doesn't want to take the responsibility of the most important aspects of their life, like how they're going to stay warm. Okay, I've got Marc up here helping me again today. And this is where the driveway is going to cut in. This is what we decided. We decided that it would be better to come up the hill instead of drop off down there, and then I'm just immediately fighting grade all the way up here. So this is the spot that we think we're going to start cutting the entrance into the property in. And I knew that tree right there was going to be an issue. I left it as long as I could, and it basically just confirmed that it's got to go. So I'm going to real quickly cut that tree down, and then we're going to shoot grade and figure out just how we're going to do this. So I initially kind of measured this once, just roughly, and we're about 16 feet of fall from where the laser is to the road right here, and that's only like 60 feet. So we don't want that. Yeah, that's real steep. But if we can stretch it out, so what I think would be best is to follow this tree line basically, and we'll cut in back here at about 5 feet off the trees so we don't disturb the root balls. We'll cut this line in that goes in line with getting in there. Okay. That gets us starting back here. It's a little lower back here on the road, but see. So what's that set at? I'm set at 16 feet. So it's 16 and a half feet approximately. About 16 and a half feet to here. We'll come on down to here. So you're every bit of 18, if not 19. Almost 19 feet. I mean, you know our living conditions up here. Yeah. 14%, is that too much? It's not too much, it's a lot, but you've got the benefit of a run-up because we take the corner of the road out of the equation essentially, and you line up closer to the corner. So it's a more of a direct shot. You've got a straight run-up, so you don't have to worry about like starting
you know,
getting
turning
momentum
off the road and then having to get started when you're already on the elevation.
Our driveway, I think, is 14%.
14%.
And that, you know, occasionally that can be a pain in the butt. So, I mean, whatever, it is what it is. But I think
the biggest problem that you have with your driveway is you don't have the run up, because you've got a
momentum
big corner to come around and get in.
That's true.
And you lose a lot of momentum trying to change direction to get up there.
That's
and
true.
That makes it real hard pulling that load.
So as we've been working on this new property, I try to fly the drone overhead every day because it offers a perspective that's fun to look at, and I think it's great content. But the one thing that drone does do is it shows very clearly where the natural untouched woods start and where people like me have moved in. I can see the mountains all around me with their natural untouched beauty. And there's part of me that's a touch sad when I see where my property line starts. And not because our place doesn't look good, because it does. It looks just fine. But it's just the idea. On our land, I have to make major changes to nature in order for our life to work here. It's just that simple, and people have been doing this for a very long time. But utilizing the hillside and learning to work with it as opposed to working against it is a skill that's developed. And the more hillside work you've done, the better you're going to be at it. And the bottom line is, Marc is way better at it than I am. There was a time when people couldn't give this land away because of the hillside factor. It was just too hard to work with. It was just too hard to get to. It was good for ranch land, and that was about it. Because things have changed and property values have gotten higher, land like this is naturally more desirable. So it's important for me to utilize the land in the best way possible.
What the hell was that? Hose pop? I think a hose pop. You get too hot? Maybe.
Marc is running to get a new hose made for his excavator. He just blew a hose, which happens from time to time, but it actually blew on the fitting that
we had to repair last week, that he had to repair last week. And so there may have been something that happened to that hose that we just didn't notice. So anyway, he has to run to town to get a hose made. I'm gonna keep watching the fire, keep piling stuff on it. And when he gets back, we're gonna start the process of digging this out right here, what's gonna be the new pad, the area that hopefully we have all the room we need for trailers and for the plow truck.
So now we're going to triple the size of the front yard. We're going to incorporate about half of the property into that front yard that the animals can use, and ultimately that means we have more land to support more animals. Now that the driveway's here, we absolutely have to have some level ground that we can use for parking or trailers or the plow truck or to build something on. I could very easily put a small hay shed and maybe even a little barn over here where we can utilize the new land to work with our animals. But we are also going to do things like campgrounds around here, so we have a place for friends and family to stay when they come up. Marc is now starting the process of moving the dirt around. There's probably close to 40 or 50 dump truck loads of dirt that he will have to move around in order to have a decent sized pad to work with. The good news is Marc is the right guy for the job. This is one thing that he is very experienced in and he's very good at. With his experience, he sees things that other people just don't see. And that comes down to where we are going to put all 50 of these truckloads of dirt, where we can incorporate it into the land and possibly even have a larger, more level piece of property to work with when we're done. So as much as I appreciate the natural beauty that can be found in nature, I recognize my place in the whole scheme of things as well. And I most definitely feel good about making our land more usable. I mentioned to Cedar the other day that by having this new land fenced into our old property, I now feel like we have enough room to have some of the bigger animals like cows and horses. But I'm not saying I want a horse. Just saying. So in the grand scheme of life, I always feel better when I know who's responsible for what. And frankly, the more I'm responsible for, the more I seem to feel good about life. I don't have to rely on anybody for the wood to keep my family warm on the coldest nights of the year. I don't have to rely on anybody for our water. I don't have to rely on anybody for our power. I don't have to rely on anybody for a lot of the basics that make our life comfortable. But still, these things require work. At this exact moment, there are already concerns about how many different parts of the world are going to deal with the upcoming winter and how people are going to stay warm. So whether it's a generator, a couple of 5-gallon gas cans, and a space heater, or whether it's a wood stove out in your shop, I would challenge you to take a look at your situation and see where you can improve. And see where you can take responsibility for the comfort in your life that we all enjoy so much. In the meantime, Marc has a serious amount of dirt to move, and I'm going to go borrow the backhoe for a couple of days and see if I can't help Marc by moving some of this dirt out of the way. But ultimately, our next video will be about this continued process. I asked Marc to help me get this job completely finished because I believe he's going to do it better than I would. And so I want him around until the job's done. But it's going to take a little bit to do this right. Marc is getting ready for winter just like I'm getting ready for winter. He's got his own projects. He's right in the middle of building a barn right now. You should go check him out over on their YouTube channel called Mountain Maple Ranch. As soon as I can get Marc back here, we're going to get this finished up and dug out. And I seriously can't wait to see the finished product. Looking at the dirt work that Marc is doing from this angle, you can see how it will directly tie into our front yard. And because we left the trees there that we did, now our front yard will incorporate both the pasture and the trees. The goats and whatever animals we keep out in that front pasture will now have access to all of this land. At some point, hopefully before snow flies, I will build basically the same fence across the front of this land that I built across the front of our property. Again, I'm going to have to use a bunch of railroad ties and a bunch of lodgepole pines to get that same look. But when it's done, it should be the icing on the cake as far as our place is concerned. Having this new property has been a tremendous blessing, and we're grateful that we were able to get it, but it's definitely going to continue to require work to make it usable.